ahead and call this budget, first budget hearing to order. Is there a motion to call the budget hearing to order? Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. With that, can I get a motion to approve today's budget hearing agenda as presented? Is there a second to the motion? All in favor? Aye. With that, the agenda for today's first public hearing on the 24-25 Rise School budget is adopted. With that, we'll go ahead and go over the budget with our CFO, Mr. Terrence. Again, this is just a draft, a first round draft of the budget. Most of the numbers are placeholders based on the enrollment numbers that the board and the school leadership team were provided. Today's hearing is to get your comments to the budget as presented. We'll go back and we'll revise and we'll come back for the second hearing in June and to adopt the budget at the board meeting after that. Mr. Kurt, our business manager, has not arrived yet. He's in traffic, but I imagine if he gets here while the presentation is going on, he may have some input to the budget as well. With that, Mr. Washington, we'll go ahead and turn this hearing over to you.
All right, as stated by the board chair, just to give everybody a brief update, what we're doing here is required by state law. Every district in the state has to do this. And basically, you gotta have 2 public hearings prior to approving the budget. The reason that this was put into state law is so that districts and charter schools will be transparent about the budgets that they're presenting to the public that they serve. So the idea is for everyone to be able to have visibility on the budget. So these 2 hearings have to happen prior to the board approving the budget for next school year. So we're talking about the 2024-2025 school year. So the whole purpose is just to get community feedback on that budget. So with that said, we'll go into the budget itself. On the next slide, now it's a little bit small, but if you guys were able to pick up a budget when you walked in, you guys would see it. Now there's a couple items on here that kind of stick out. It's typically these budgets would be broken up into a revenue and expenditure section. That top section that you guys are looking at, this is going to be the revenue section. You'll see these codes and kind of descriptions. This is called these are the state account codes that are used for these budgets. This is what we use internally when we're doing the accounting. But I'll just give a brief explanation. For instance, donations are donations that are made to the school. That's the first line item. Investment income. The school has a bond, and this bond holds a certain amount of cash on hand. So the investment income is related to that bond. Then you have here where it says total quality basic education formula earnings. This is how all over the state, these are how districts receive revenue for the children that they receive. So the state has a quality basic education formula. Just to keep it short, this is something that was approved way back in 1984. And this is something that is how all of the districts in public school, K through 12 in the state are funded. So this is one component of it, but this kind of lumps in also because RISE is a state charter school. It also incorporates the state charter school funding as well. State charter school funding is what schools receive because they don't have the local property tax dollars that say Fulton County would have or another district like Atlanta Public Schools would have. They're able to pull, like, for them, billions of dollars in property tax dollars, and that goes into how they fund their school districts. Other grants for the state, the main one here that is under this other grant section is mostly the security grant. This also used to be the state facility grant. Unfortunately, the state facility grant was not continued for state charter schools. Only local charter schools could access it next year. So hopefully, I know we have an advocacy agents group, I guess you could call it, the Georgia Charter Schools Association. They've been working really hard trying to make sure that the facility grant is made available. And that can be used for things like the facility, that could be used for transportation and things like that. So hopefully that comes back around after next year, but as of now, that's been removed. But the school does have access to the security grant, which is being invested by the school to make sure the school has the best security possible. And then you got the federal government grant. These are grants based on student need. These are things like Title I, Title II. All of the title grants and everything are kind of consolidated into that line item. And then under that, you'll see that the total income on here that's listed, $6.5 million roughly. That's about how much money the school is going to bring in next year. Of course, the school is always working to bring in additional grants, additional donations, and things of that nature. And the school is kind of strategizing on those things. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. Now, on the expense side of things, the major expense for a school is personnel. The vast majority of the school budget goes into the number one resource, which are the teachers and the personnel. So instruction, you guys will see on here, those are the majority of that is, the teachers. Improvement of instructional services, you'll see on here, that's kind of self-explanatory. Instructional staff training, you'll see that on here. Most of these items are associated with some of these revenue items up top, such as the federal grant administration, general administration, and school administration. Those are all the pieces that run the school. Then you got support services business, that's the business office of the school. Maintenance and operation of plant, that's the facility. That's everything that's entailed with the facility. That could be plumbing, that could be security, that could be a lot of different things just to keep the facility in order. Then student transportation, of course, it's just transportation of the students. Support services central, that's a lot of the other support services that goes into the school at the administrative level. School nutrition, that's a school nutrition program that the students receive. And big item on here, debt service. So I mentioned the bond. The school has a bond deal. Every district in the state utilizes bond financing. That's how they keep the facilities up. That's how they build these schools and keep them running. So the debt service is the amount that you basically have to pay. So it's kind of like, your credit card payments or something like that. But this is the people who invested into the school. This is paying those people back for that investment. And then AP carryover is just the accounts payable. So that's vendors and everything that are owed towards the end of the school year that are carried into the new school year. So the total expenses here, $6.5 million with a net income of $14,000. Of course, this assumes a enrollment of 430 students. This is a very conservative budget. The state has something called Hold Harmless, and right now the school is being funded at 463 students. The school should be able to continue receiving that funding for the 463 if for whatever reason they could not hit that target or above it. The Hold Harmless basically says if a district loses students that they're not going to be impacted by it until the next school year. So not 24-25, but 25-26. All right, next slide, unless there's some questions.
Do you want to take the questions from the board now or at the?
Probably be better then.
Okay.
All right. Now, we talked about personnel. I said that's the number one expense for a school. So just talking about that, going through this process, and of course this is the first iteration of the budget. When you're going through this process, one thing that you got to make sure is that you're allocating the adequate amount of resources. Well, the Georgia Department of Education helps us out with this. They created something called, a document called the Weights for FTE Funding, and with it, they established what the ratios are for each funding category. So some of the funding categories are lumped together. It's not just K 1, 2, 3, and onward. It's K 1 through 3, 4 and 5, 6 through 8. So as it pertains to RISE. So there's also a lot of special categories as well. So the idea with this is to create a calculator that the school leadership could be able to utilize that's going to determine how many students could actually be, how many teachers will be needed to service the students at the school. So this was just an example that was given in the document. This assumes that the school will have about 470 students. 474 specifically. So using this calculation, that basically earns 20 normal teachers. So this is just regular teachers. This is not your special ed, your gifted, your support teachers, your parapros, and some of those other type of support staff. This is just regular teachers. The reason that's important because if a school had too many teachers, that's going to, not be as efficient as what as a school can. So going to the next slide, vendors, another major consideration. So some of the recommendations here, kind of a to-do list for the school is staff should complete the vendor form attached to the budget workbook. So basically this is a form just listing, these are all the vendors of the school, this is how much we pay them based on their contract, and then figuring out next year and saying, okay, how can we save money here? The current year contract should be reviewed and saved in the school's business ops shares folder so that the school and everybody who should have eyes on it has eyes on that. And then those contracts should be negotiated prior to the fiscal year's start. So the idea is to have all these contracts worked out prior to next year. So what kind of contracts does the school have? The school has contracts for all kinds of things like janitorial services, security, landscaping, some of the educational service providers that help out at the school. All of these things are based on contracts, and the school needs to make sure they have all of this together prior to going into next year. And then a recommended target reduction for all of these contracts together would be a 20% reduction, and this allows the school to have healthier level of cash flow so that the school could be able to withstand any kind of deviations in the plan. So you always want to have good cash to move forward. So other considerations, just things to think about. The school should actively maintain enrollment during a school year using a school-based CRM system. That's a customer relations management system. All this is a system that keeps track of, okay, who's enrolling, who's applying, when communications go out to parents and things like that. These are systems that handle all of that. Businesses use this all of the time. All school systems utilize this. Anybody who's been in a traditional school system or people who have even been in other charter schools in the past, and they get these emails that go out letting everybody know what's going on. A lot of the times they come from these systems, but the idea of it is, since the school's revenue is based on how many students are coming into the school, that you need to be able to track that. And you're not just tracking the students at one particular moment. There's different levels. There's families and students that apply. There's ones that are actually enrolled in the school. There are ones that are just interested. You want to track all of that information year to year. You also want to track how many students sign up and who actually show up on day one. Every student that signs up for a school is not going to stay in that school. Now, if those students don't stay in the school, that means the school is not going to get that funding. So that's why we use a conservative budget. Like I said earlier, we should be held harmless and we should be funded at 463 students or higher. But if that doesn't happen, if for whatever reason some parents pull those students out and then the school doesn't replace those students, that's going to impact the funding. The draft FY 2025 budget, and for the state fiscal year, they're talking about the 2024-25 school year. So we call it FY 2025. Budget considers the payment of the school's accounts payable outstanding. So this is not something that was kind of forgotten and something that we're dealing with this year. This is something that we're considering going into next year. So we owe money. We want to make sure that we pay all of the vendors that we owe, and that's also considered as part of the budget. The school should create a committee to address expenditure efficiencies, and the recommendation here is that the school basically put together a committee that's dealing with what actually is going on in the school and how the school could be more efficient. Maybe a great example, the school had a service provider that was providing janitorial services, and the school said, you know what, we could do this in-house at a lot cheaper, and that way we could divert and put more money into the instructional program. So that's an example of an efficiency that this committee could work on. The school should create, award letters for all grants the school receives should be shared with Mr. Kerr, who is the school business manager, and filed in the share drive. The idea here is that we're just aware of all of the money that's coming in, not just from the Georgia Department of Education, but all money from any kind of grants that are out there, and there's a ton of them, and the school's been doing a great job this year of accumulating those grants, so we just need to make sure that we have allocated funding and projections of when we're gonna actually receive those funds. Fundraising should be utilized to fund and subsidize scholar programs. So that's where, you know, unlike a district, even though some districts do this, with charter schools, you gotta get fundraising. You gotta have a great relationship with the community, and you gotta get people to invest into the school. The school has this in multiple ways. Sometimes people are donating time. Sometimes people are donating a lot of resources. The school has established a lot of relationships that the school leader can speak to over the past year. But things like this, they all provide resources for the school. And of course, this is something that needs to be accumulated over time. Questions?
Yes, I do. I think for the grants, I think for the
Okay.
Hello. So I'm just saying the increase for the federal grants, I think when I calculated it, we actually had an additional 91,000 from the IDEA grant. All the award letters were received maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and they were shared with the board. With the board and the actual, it's in the business ops folder, as well as Mr. Harden emailed them again, I think last week. He did. But these were awards, prior to, after the June date, when we got our federal funds, yeah.
So I'll update that for IDEA, because we were basically looking at all of the federal funds that we got over this year and then looking at those award letters and making sure that we add those, but I'll make sure I add the IDEA as well. And I'll double check that. I think the 320 considers the fact, yeah, because I basically made the assumption that extra years.
Also, the 2,700 student transportation, the 90,000, is that from what month, March until, because I know per student.
I included that as a placeholder. I know Mr. Kirk was in talks to try to see if there was another vendor, so I just kind of used that one as a placeholder.
Okay.
Who's supposed to be a budget? I don't get no breakdown on this. This is annoying to look at.
Yeah, they definitely don't ask about that in Congress, so as far as facilities go. But, for the securities grant, is that this year's grant included in this number, or are you anticipating that we'll get the same sum next year?
No, and Mr. Harding could correct me if I'm wrong, but the security grant doesn't expire until September of 2025.
Yes, so that was 237, and we got additional money that.
But it has to be drawn down sooner than September.
Yeah.
So,
But we have staff focused on drawing down those funds, correct?
Yes.
That's a question for Mr.
Yes,
Harding and
yes.
Dr. White. So they should be drawn down on time.
they're already in motion.
Okay, sounds good. As far as the CRM program, is that built into the program? I think Ms. Pierre estimated the cost of that to be about $15,000.
I did not include that.
A software system?
But there already is a software
Is it a software
line
program?
item. So, and that's part of the contract, once we add that into there, we can just, staff will be able to pick and choose how they want to spend that software budget.
Okay. And we don't have to wait until next year's funding. Is that something that we can do as soon as possible to bolster the recruitment efforts?
The 15,000.
Yeah.
I'll take a look.
Okay. Thank you. And then as far as vendor contracts, I understand it that Mr. Kirk, business manager, and then the department heads are going to be submitting RFPs for existing contracts in order to reduce those prices. Is that the understanding across the board?
RFP, does the department?
Well, I thought it was required.
I think they're gonna get multiple bids.
Multiple bids?
Yeah.
Okay, so, yes, Mr. Kirk is actually in the process of creating standard operating procedures so that we can do that particular RFP process.
Dr. Simmons, could you put in the notes that we're gonna set a deadline for, multiple bids so that we can have an informed number for building the budget at our next meeting.
And there should be a policy in place for that too, for bidding out.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of the work that we were supposed to accomplish
Wouldn't
this
that be
year.
part of
and the
laws?
financial
Laws,
policy update.
there are laws
So
in
we'll get
place
to
for
that.
bidding.
As far as the numbers that this budget is built on, what number did you use to model this budget?
430.
You used 430.
430.
Okay, and is that the number that we're saying that we have?
Yes, I have a question about it because initially the number was 500. And I see that we have more money with less students, but I actually see where you, extracted from the general administration, school administration account.
Yep. I removed some of the employees that were no longer here, and yeah.
And could you speak to where, really explain the 463? I mean, if we're at 430 and we're modeling 463, how does that come into play with our budget? Are we gonna get funded at the 430 or are we gonna get funded at the 463?
I've asked the SCSC for official clarification on that, but typically, because we have an existing year under our belt, because we're below the amount that we're being funded at right now, and the amount that we're gonna be funded next year is based on our funding right now, we get our first allotment sheets for next year, and it's gonna be based on the 463. So the idea is that we're gonna be held harmless next year, but I just wanna get clarification on that. But our budget now is conservative, assuming the 430, just in case we're not held harmless. Now, the difference between that 430 and that 463 will be over $300,000.
Okay, and I know we had to submit a data collection sheet yesterday. What was our count on the data collection sheet?
Projection of 500.
How does that affect us? I mean, are we supposed to report actually funds in receipts or are we over projecting?
Well, the way that it was set up on the data sheet, it basically looks at that 463 I was talking about. They had a row that already can touch that row, and that's all the FTEs that we have for the school there. And then we needed to add any additional FTEs in the row below it. And in the row below it, I believe we added 37 FTEs there, which got us up from 463, which we're already funded at, up to the 500. And then we included the GTIDs and names and all of that information as requested by the commission for the additional 37 students.
To get us to 500. Thank you, Terrence. Ms. Jones, do you have any questions?
Is there anywhere in here that we can add room for like marketing and things of that nature?
Yes. Under support services business, we can add some marketing in there.
See, I'm wondering. Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't crazy. How do we report to? They receive federal funding. How do we
Did you
report
have a
to
figure
stuff?
in mind as far as the marketing was concerned?
No, no, you know.
40,000 would be good. If
No,
we're
you don't.
doing maybe 3,000 times 12, 36. Maybe
More on
go
that
to
than
the
your
40 for
financial
refresh.
system.
But starting there.
Use that for a house.
No, I need to use it for a financial
Yes.
system.
Does that include school? That's in addition to.
That's in addition to school band. I will say, if I may, that the team worked on a marketing plan, and in the actual enrollment recruitment plan,
I don't
there's
care.
price points next to each activity or required recommendation, so that,
I don't care.
I think we need to double check to make sure that we may need a little more or less. But there is also a SWOT analysis done, and needs assessment based on what we would need, so that data would drive our decision making, and not just saying, you know, we just need a certain amount of dollars. We want to make sure we validate that, so that we can align the resources, research activities to the actual price points. So, I don't know if it was more than 40,000, but I know there's some price points next to each ask.
Have those been shared with Mr. Kurt and Mr. Karen?
Everybody received them, and we also have them in the Google Drive with everyone. And I think yesterday you asked me to share the Google
I asked
files
you,
with.
I asked you to share it. I asked you to share it as a part of the recruitment plan, but not separately for a budget compilation.
Yeah, everybody has
Yeah,
that.
I totally agree with that. Thank you.
And the team shared it at the last presentation, I think it was last month. Mr.
How can
Nash
you
and
put
Ms. Pierre
40,000
shared their
in marketing and
Right, and we'll get
15,000
back
in
to all that, because
CRM?
there needs to be actual companies in there, the names of companies and quotes from those companies, and not just numbers inserted in the box.
How y'all know this? This is
Right,
standard.
numbers in the box, right. They can share what with numbers, but it just have like names of companies besides school names. All right, that's a good idea, thank you.
That's
Was there
standard.
anything else, Mr. Washington?
I don't think so. This is just the first draft, so all of this input is really good, so we're just gonna continue to update it. As we update the budget, all of this information has to be publicly available, so you all, at any point in time, could request this information from the front desk, for a copy of the, most recent budget that is published. You guys can also see it on the school's website.
Is it this thing here?
How,
It's this.
you work in connection
It's a
with
paper
Mr.
that
Curtis,
looks like
Dr.
this.
Watson on this? Or will there be meetings set up in order to
Where is
play
it?
with these numbers to get where we need to be?
Yeah, we'll have to meet.
Is that it?
I've met. We meet every Friday, but we'll probably need to have
What's
some
this?
separate budget meetings just to be able to go through these items and
I don't
kind of
see
figure out
it.
where we're going with the vendors on the personnel side, as far as a number of teachers. Dr. Watson made available the staffing matrix and that, so just refining and going through that and using the earned position calculator and just trying to figure that part out.
How do, and I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have questions.
Nothing.
How do school level
What are you
personnel
reporting it to?
elevate their concerns as to items they would like to see added to the budget?
I would imagine that would kind of flow up to Dr. Watson.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure that everybody is aware of that everybody has to give input to the budget before it's finalized. So usually, prior to the budget hearing, there is a budget process for the forecasting. And if there are any required action items, the actual department heads would actually submit the information so that we can have real-time estimate and projected numbers prior to the hearing. And so the collaboration with the team and the department heads, even some teachers are a part of the budget forecasting process. And so there is protected time, and should be, for this type of process. I know that this is a draft, but there is a whole budget forecasting process, because I know for an item for transportation, if we had involved our facilities director, he probably could have given us a needs assessment and given us input prior to the actual budget. So there is a whole process for budget forecasting. So we would definitely have protected time for that.
And I think the transportation is a good example of it, other facility needs, but another good one just to keep in mind that I'm sure the school's working on is curriculum. What curriculum services is the school gonna use next year? Which ones are they using this year? On that big vendor list, those are kind of the things to keep in mind. But as far as softwares, as far as assessments, as far as everything concerning curriculum, we really need to know what's the price, for those items going into next year. Are there efficiencies there? A lot of schools, at other board meetings, I know a lot of schools are talking about transitioning from one, software to another, because they feel like another one is more affordable, but more valuable at the same time. So just those type of considerations.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hardy is on the call. Can he hear us?
I'm here.
Did you have any questions regarding the budget as presented, or any questions for Karen regarding this process?
I have many.
No, I'm reserving questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. So with that, I don't believe Mr. Curtin's here yet. Oh, Dr. Simmons, yes, please.
Thank you. I have a question to line item 2213, instructional staff training. Currently, only 3% is allocated toward that. Certainly, we know that we have a variety of teachers who are both certified and non-certified, first-year teachers, a variety of experience. How can we, are there opportunities to increase this amount from 2,000 to more? And what does the 2002 currently?
Put that marketing
And I'll just
money
speak
into
on
that.
why this amount is so low. A lot of that was lumped into instructional professional services versus being put into instructional staff training. So part of that is an accounting thing, but at the same time, that's something that would be good for us to pull out so that staff will be able to look at that and, determine, you know, where that professional development needs to be.
Automatic. I'm disturbed.
We do have public comment.
Yes, we do.
It's the whole public. No, I'll go get it for you.
All right, we're going to start the public hearing comment part. So the public hearing comment period for each meeting will end after 15 minutes or when all signed up speakers have given their public comment, whichever one occurs first. To sign up for public comment, you should have signed this paper here to indicate that you'd like to speak. Signing up for public comment will close once the meeting has been called to order. Tasha Harris.
Yep.
All right, good evening. I am a parent here. My son is attending grammar. I had a son to graduate from college prep, so I have many questions, but first and foremost, I don't see any annual reports on the website, especially on the school website. When I pull it up, it's the same sheet we were given, except the table is yellow. And it has no breakdown of income, no breakdown of expenses. I'm a senior financial analyst. This is not how budget reports look at all. And I don't know. I don't know how you guys could even like, to me, this is, I see spelling errors. I have been insulted at looking at this and not seeing a full breakdown of where money is coming from, the title grants, everything. Each account should be broken down into a sub-account. It should have projected numbers versus actual numbers for revenue and expenses. You should have deductions. You should have all of that on your budget report. And you guys type this up on Microsoft Word, spelling it as something my children can do. And you expect us to think that this is what we're supposed to accept. I heard the young man state that this numbers are placeholders. How many numbers on here are placeholders? Which ones are real, actual budget numbers, actual incomes versus expenses versus a placeholder? Why is that not indicated in the report? When I have to submit reports to any government agency for any reason whatsoever on behalf of a private organization, and I've managed budgets with multiple millions of dollars, I have to have a full breakdown and indicate what I have as a placeholder for what we're expecting to see from a projected income of budget for every single account versus what we've already spent. And I can't just say, this is a placeholder here and not indicate which ones. Because how do you know which numbers are real and which ones aren't? So, I also have a problem with the fact that this is, you guys are required to report your finances as a part of federal law. So where are those reports at? Do I need to do a FOIA with the Georgia Department of Education to get it? Or are you all going to make it available because it's public information? So it should not be a secret on where these reports are. It should be an easy link on your website. Since she wants to make sure she budgets for marketing, then put that on your website so that we can click that and see all of that breakdown. Also, who are the vendors? Who are the debt service? Who are you paying this money to? Are you guaranteeing them an ROI or return on their investment? How do you have donations at $5,000, but then you're saying debt service for people who donated here It's $504,000. That's not math. I don't even know how you guys came up with that income versus that expense. And when you have a budget report, you at least break it down by months. So whatever the first month of the fiscal year is, that should be the first month listed. And then you have that whole fiscal year. What's the fiscal year? Is it January to June? How does that go? July through June. So I should see 12 months, July through June on here. And then the breakdown for each account. And then what you all have spent versus what you're expecting, projected versus actuals. I should see that for 12 months, for a whole fiscal year. We don't see that. What is that information? And as far as the numbers here, I don't know about anybody else. I don't get, my children don't get free lunch or anything, but I do know that you guys receive that funding. When you're receiving this type of funding, you're basically saying that there are kids here that are not hitting that income medium to be able to charge everybody money. So where is that? That's separate funding when it comes to meals and lunches, and you guys have that account for it, but there's nothing there. How is this stuff missing? Why do you have placeholders? How long have you all been doing these budget reports? If you want fiscal year 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, you should have multiple years of annual reports. So why do you need placeholders is the question. That's not something you need if you already have funding allocated for those accounts and those categories. You don't need a placeholder. You just tell us, here's what we spent, here's what we're projecting, and because mathematics is addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, here's the total balances. That's it. It's not difficult. Okay, thank you.
The next person on public comment.
I have more after that.
Did you want to address any of that, or can I move on to the next comment?
I could quickly address that.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Just to quickly address some of those things, what we provide on the website is a summary because, everyone doesn't have a background in finance and everything